We are officially halfway to Halloween, so what better time for me to finally make my travel vlog from last October's trip to Boston. Per usual, I started off at the San Diego airport, but this time I was flying first class. My friend Tess had a bunch of airline credits that were going to expire, so she graciously used them on me. I've never flown first class, so this is quite the experience. I could get used to flying like this, with the complimentary drinks and legroom for days. These are my warm nuts and my meal, which earned me a $100 travel voucher because they didn't have my first choice meal option. I watched Prisoners with my fancy headphones. Once landing in Boston, Tess picked me up. When entering Tess's home, a bun treat tax must be paid immediately. My first full day was filled with haunted attractions, starting with the long-abandoned Metropolitan State Mental Hospital in Waltham. The star attraction for me that day was the Quaker Cemetery, unofficially known as the Spidergate Cemetery. I flew all the way across the country to see this place, and the gates weren't there. But this cemetery is still beautiful and full of mysterious rumors, such as having a portal to hell and being a site for secret satanic rituals. However, we just had a nice walk amongst the fall foliage with no sinister activities in sight. Next was a scenic drive through the beautiful Hope Cemetery in Worcester, which has some newer and older graves. Look, it's the Sanderson sisters! Our next stop was the Bancroft Tower, a castle-looking stone monument built in honor of George Bancroft, who, among other things, founded the Naval Academy in Annapolis. It's an impressive site surrounded by a lovely park. For lunch, we fueled up at O'Connor's Irish Pub. Our eyes were bigger than our stomachs, and even splitting things was too much for us. The Wayside Inn grist mill seemed like it was right out of a storybook. We enjoyed exploring the surrounding area. Our final stop on day one was Wilson Farm. This place has every kind of pumpkin imaginable. We got all stocked up for Halloween and got some cider from the store. We had dinner at home with the Buns. On day two, we were off to Laconia, New Hampshire for the Pumpkin Festival. Here is Tess and her husband Sean in their costumes. Tess is obviously the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, or TESS. It was here that we met up with other bestie Tawny and her boyfriend Ian. Don't worry, I had a date too. My stuffed cat Salem to complement my Sabrina costume. Cries. The Pumpkin Festival and the town of Laconia were a vision of good old small town fall fun. The highlight was taking a scenic train ride in a vintage train car along Wake Winnisquam, if I'm saying that correctly. We splurged for the plush first-class seats, and it was worth every penny.
Like we're still in the parking lot. Oh my god, it's so exciting!
I will now stop talking for a little bit so you can also enjoy the scenery. Seeing all the jack-o'-lanterns at night was beautiful. Before we left, we loaded up on loaded tater tots and then drove back to Boston. The next day, Tess and Sean had to work or whatever, so I braved the rain and the tea and took myself on a little solo excursion. The destination? The John F. Kennedy Presidential Library. This is the 4th presidential library I have visited. I'd say it's worth a visit regardless of your political affiliation. I enjoyed a light lunch at their cafe while gazing at this gloomy Boston harbor view. Dinner was at the historic Warren Tavern with the gang, including my friend Andres and his soon-to-be wife Jen. This 1780 tavern claims to have the best clam chowder in the city, and I think they could be right. The next day was Halloween! We started the day off strong with a trip to the Old North Church, most famous for playing a massive role in the American Revolution. But I naturally was more interested in its newly renovated crypt. After squeezing in yet another cemetery and some swings, we went to Mike's Pastry to stock up on cannolis. We then went to Mount Auburn Cemetery, which is the most beautiful cemetery I have ever been to. Even if you think cemeteries are weird and creepy, you have to admit that this place is gorgeous. Here I am running so Tawny can get a completely candid shot of me strolling through the graves. The weather was what I believe they call brisk and got a little too cold for this California girl. I couldn't imagine spending Halloween at a more perfect location. In the evening, we stayed in and got the Buns dressed up in their costumes. They were absolutely thrilled, as you can tell. My final morning consisted of a delicious breakfast at Brookline Lunch. These baklava pancakes are a must-have and should be split. Then it was a couple more first-class flights back to San Diego. This was the third fall in a row that I visited Boston, and I think I'm going to have to go again this year. I hope you enjoyed this long-winded vlog and got a taste of fall in New England.